Welcome to the Jessica Broadway Show, where we talk about everything from motherhood to marriage, faith to finance, and the ever-changing face of entrepreneurship. Why? Because life is now in session, and we have a lot to talk about. My hope is that through listening to the conversations we have on this podcast, that you will get some encouragement and endurance for the journey that you're on and the story that you're writing. Thank you for listening today. I am Jessica Broadway, and I live a multi-passionate life as a wife, mom, coach, author, and entrepreneur. I'm a ministry leader. I get to travel around helping people navigate seasons of change, and I'm really glad that you decided to join us today. I have a very special guest today on the show. I'm going to be interviewing the man, the myth, the legend, the other half of the marriage, Josh Broadway.
Howdy.
To know him is to love him, and he willingly said he would come on here and let me ask him questions and just roll with the punches.
Yeah.
So Josh and I met. Actually, I'm going to let him tell you his version of our journey together. And tell me, how did you meet?
Is this a test? If I get something wrong? Oh, man. All right. So we met actually at a church camp there in Searcy, Arkansas, at Harding University, church camp called Uplift. A little plug there. It's a fantastic camp to go to, attend, and you never know who you're going to meet. But yeah, we met in the mid-'90s. I guess it was towards the late '90s. That we met there at Harding, and then we had a little thing called AOL back then, and we would stay in communication with one another through instant messaging, which would be kind of modern day texting these days. But yeah, instant messaging. We communicated back and forth. You were living in Florida at the time, yeah. Living here in Springfield, and lost connection there for a number of years, and then as fate had it, it would bring us back together. I was working at a radio station here in Springfield, and you were coming up to see the sights and sounds of Springfield, and we were able to connect, and then the rest, they say, is history.
It is.
So, did I get it all right?
I think so. I think you're pretty. I like to give a little more like detail, emotional vibes about it. But yes,
For sure.
I still remember the shirt you were wearing the night I came to the radio station. And you were playing it super cool and told me that you had to,
That's what I do.
It is what you do. But I remember being like super nervous to ask you to come hang out with us. And I was just trying to be like, what did the kids say? Not trying too hard. And so I was like, yeah, we're going to be up for a while. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
And
I remember the movie.
You made fun of my
Space Cowboys.
I don't even remember the movie.
Yeah.
But you did make a comment about my capri pants and that you hated capri pants.
I didn't say like, look at those pants. I hate those capri pants. I think that was like a conversation that we had at one point. Past that time, it was like we were just talking about likes and dislikes, and you were wearing capri pants. In fact, I think you were wearing capri pants that you had made.
I did that, and that's what we were talked about. It's like, well, do you hate these ones? Because I made these ones.
Of course not.
And you did not hate those ones. But when I did say, I was
capri
like,
pants were pretty popular.
They were. And so then I was like, you should come over and hang out with us. And you were like, well, I work till midnight, so I probably won't. And I was like, all right, that's cool. Whatever.
What was it like?
And it was like 12, 15. You pulled up in the driveway. And we stayed up all night talking.
You can't show all your cards.
That's true.
You gotta play cool.
He was playing a little hard to get. But yeah, so we stayed up all night talking. And I do remember that time just being like, this is like my dream. Like a guy that would stay up and talk to me all night. Like it was special. And then I went home from there, and or no, you left because you had to go do something with your car or something. And then you called me and you said that you heard that I like to paint. And then you took me to Wilson's Creek Battlefield
Yeah.
to look at wildflowers and
Yeah.
take pictures so I could paint something from that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was super special. And then I went home and I told my family all about you. And I was like, man, if I don't marry this guy, I want to marry somebody just like him.
Man.
I did.
Like,
I mean, you had the cologne that I always dreamed I would marry somebody wearing that cologne. I had smelled that cologne once before. I was like, I'm marrying somebody that wears that cologne. So it's pretty much a done deal from the day that you walked in wearing that cologne. I was like, that's it. That's how it's going to go down.
it was serendipitous.
Yes.
Is that, I mean, and I had a couple different fragrances.
But you wore that one that day. You wore that one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I was like, it's the one. It smells like I just knew it. So we have been together for married 23 years.
Yeah, coming up.
And together for 25 years in May.
Yeah.
And we have 3 boys together. And some days they're like me, some days they're like him.
For sure.
And some days they're like us. And we go, yeah, that's definitely our kid. I can see both versions of us in that. So, but he is such a cheerleader for me. And I remember early in our relationship, I was going to be spending a season abroad. And it was for a study abroad semester in college. And I remember then I was there for the summer staying at your parents' house. And we were having a serious talk about like, what's the future look like and all of that. And I wanted to move here to Springfield, and we dated long distance. So we had to really be very clear about what we wanted. And it challenged us in a very different way because I was at school in Oklahoma and you were up here in Springfield. And so that summer I was ready to drop out of school and move up here, transfer to MSU, and then finish my degree or some sort of whatever I was going to do then, but I was going to not go on this trip abroad. And I remember you said to me then that do you remember what you said to me?
I don't. This is where I receive an F.
Well, let me look in our script here.
That's right.
No, you said to me then that you were like, if you don't do this, I'm afraid you'd regret it one day. And I just knew then that your wisdom that you brought to our relationship and I was willing to follow your lead, and that you would step in and you would, even though I'm sure you would have loved it if I moved there, and that, or maybe you didn't. Maybe it was like, oh, you need to go travel the world. But I just remember your sacrifice very early on in our relationship, that you had the maturity and the wisdom to balance the relationship, and that you would be willing to sacrifice an immediate reward for what was best for me and us long term. Yeah. And I just really appreciated that then. And so you have always had that effect in that role in our relationship, is you have such wisdom and grounded, and you are a very emotional person and you feel things deeply, but you definitely have this gifting to be able to say, okay, regardless of how I feel, what is it that I want? What does the future look like? And so I knew you were somebody that I wanted to interview, because one of the things that we do, or I hope that we get to do on this podcast, is helping people tell their and story. So, how do you live a life that, is an and? It's like, this is what I want, and this is what I want for the future. I am this version of me, and I'm that version of me. And that we get to be multi-passionate. We get to be evolving. We get to be broken and healing at the same time. And life isn't neat. It doesn't fit into a pretty picture box. It's ever changing. And I think these are important life stories for people to hear. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Our show, I'm going to say, because someday I think we're going to have our own show together. I'm sure of it. But we're at our kitchen table where all of our great conversations happen.
There have been several.
That's something that we've done really well, is like coming to the table for family meetings and talks and planning. And we've had hard conversations. We've had good conversations, sweet ones, tender ones. And we keep coming back to the table, which I think is something that I love, love, love about our family.
Yeah, for sure.
So are you ready for your first question?
Oh, let's do it.
Okay. If you think about your story, your journey in life,
Okay.
where did people leave a mark on you, and how has it shaped the way that you show up today? I did not prep him for these questions.
No, this
is
like
real-time
raw.
thoughts. This is real time.
So think about the story of my life. Where did people leave a mark on me?
Good, bad?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I am being married to this beautiful lady, multi-passionate, I think you said in the
I did.
in the title.
I am. That's the best way to describe
That is,
me.
yes, multi-passionate. I've been able to take several like personality surveys, diagrams, and they're great because they help discover and put words that that you're familiar with, that others are familiar with, that I didn't know maybe about myself, but can say, oh yes, I'm this way, or
Sure.
I align with this philosophy. I think you had said before that I'm a very grounded person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't veer off the path too far one way or the other. It's just, this is the way that I see the world, and this is the way that I go. And I think with folks in my life, I'm a very observant person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in one of the tests that you gave me, I was a guardian.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And just how life has shaped me has kind of led me to that path. And I would agree that I would venture to say that, yes, I am a guardian, which you would describe, or how that test would describe, would be somebody who is loyal.
Yeah. I mean, like the definition, it's on the, if anyone listening wants to take the assessment, it's one of my very, very favorite tests to help us understand and self-reflect, but it's called the 5 voices, and there's the guardian, the connector, the nurturer, the creative, and the pioneer. Those are the 5 voices. And the crux of that is that we are all of those voices.
For sure.
But sometimes life forces us into using one voice over another. And the idea is to create harmony and balance, and understanding what it looks like, what each one of those voices looks like when we use it, right? But then what is our foundational voice? What is the one that aligns most with the way that we see the world, and how we would communicate given the chance and the freedom and the opportunity to embrace that, right? So the guardian is the protector. The best way to describe that is the protector of what was, and the one that is like charged with discernment and reflection, asks the hard questions, has an uncanny level of discernment, and they have to solve the problem of, is letting go of what we have right now worth the risk for whatever the future is, right?
Next,
which incidentally, the guardian voice is my 5th voice. It's my least strongest voice, which maybe we'll get into in a minute. But understanding that about you is really interesting.
Yeah, and that's really kind of what shaped me with where I would say I'm at today, is just previous incidents in life. Nothing like, sometimes you hear stories and people have this earth-shattering moment. I wouldn't say anything in my life. I've lived a very blessed life to where I've had challenges, I've had growth opportunities, but in my opinion, they aren't, oh my gosh, earth-shattering, earth-shaking.
Sure.
but I've been a part of situations where maybe someone has, and confided in me with information, and just that has helped shape my view of life and the path going forward, to where I would say I am more guardian in the sense of I'm going to protect,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to protect, my circle, and keep them safe. But if I notice something is off, I'm going to react to it, just because of, again, my own experiences or experiences that, others in my
Sure.
circle have had
Sure.
around me that have affected me. So, when you talk about where people left their mark on me, I I would consider myself a passionate person, but not necessarily. Hey, let me show you my passion. It's more of a, I don't know, subdued passion. Now, when it comes to like the
No,
Kansas City
just kidding.
Chiefs, when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, I will show you my passion for sure. I will.
There are three things Josh is excited about in the world:
There's
the
a lot.
Chiefs preseason, the Chiefs
Preseason,
regular
yeah.
season, and the Chiefs postseason. Okay.
This is how passionate I am. There's like 137 days until kickoff. I know those things. It's things that
You can
I'm
see,
aware
you're
of.
witnessing, if you're watching the video, you can see the energetic shift at
For
just
sure,
the mere
for
mention
sure, yes.
of the word the Chiefs.
Let's go.
It is ingrained in you.
Yeah.
But you're right. You do such a good job of, that's like the role you play in our family. You're our leader, our protector, provider, and you bring to the table that what you're like everything that is by nature to you, you've amplified as a strength. And we've come to rely on you. Our youngest son, just recently told us about an idea he had that he was going to have a tattoo.
Yeah.
And it was going to be,
He's 11.
Yeah, it was going to be on his arm, and specifically because, and it was going to be a king from chess, right?
He's really kind of been inquisitive about playing chess and figuring it out. I was like, let's play checkers first, just to kind of get the elementary, even though they're two different games. It's just kind of understanding the board. But then, because in chess you have different pieces that do different things, and understanding
different roles.
and strategy.
It's like life.
Yeah, and he's caught on very quickly for strategizing in chess, because you're always one or two moves ahead of the other person. Is kind of what you're thinking about on the board. But yes, he had a tattoo idea, understanding the pieces.
So he's going to get a king chess piece, right, on his arm, because tell him why.
Yeah, it's for him,
Yeah.
right? I wasn't in on that story, but he wanted on one arm a tattoo of a king, or a crown,
right,
and then on the other arm he wanted to
he wanted the tattoo representing me to be on his leg, because he said that I help him stand up, and I give him, I support him.
Yeah.
But then he said that you gave him his strength, and that you always give him the courage to be himself.
Yeah.
And so it just speaks to your strengths. That's who you are in our family. And but I'm glad you shared that. And can you think of like one person in particular that has left a mark on you, that you, either for good or for bad, that you were just like, you know what, that was a pivotal moment that changed who I am, or added to my insight about myself? And that, you don't have to use their name, but
Sure.
do you know a situation that
there, and again, not one particular situation said, this is how I'm going to shape my life because of this one individual.
Right.
It's just been multitude of people. And
was there a common theme in the experiences you had that you just were like, this is what I'm meant to do? Like, this is the kind of person that I want to be, for good or for bad?
Hard to say. A theme, yes. in situations, I always take a look and say, I can always pull something good out of a bad situation.
Sure.
There's always going to be a nugget that I can take on, I don't want to behave this way. I don't want to be like this person. So the nugget that I take from that is I'm going to be aware of situations, whatever comes up in life, that I'm not going to act a certain way. I try to be aware of those situations as they come up. One particular person, no, that's very hard to say one particular, but kind of like in the five voices, it's you're a chameleon and you absorb all the voices at one point in life, but you tend to go to one or two of those voices primarily, and that's again kind of what has shaped me into, after taking that test, being a guardian, because again I feel that I'm very perceptive. I can read people pretty well. Not bragging on myself. It's just how I see the world and how I can read people and situations. It's I align more with the guardian personality.
Yeah.
So it was a great test to take.
And you have, that's a strength of yours for sure, is to protect people and to call out injustice. You're a protector of truth, I think, and I see you do that, and you're willing to speak up and willing to be, challenge your own belief systems and thoughts.
Sure.
Speaking of challenging ourselves, can you think of a version of you, or maybe an old mindset that you had to release at some point in your life in order to become the man you are today?
Yeah, people pleaser.
I
Right? I mean, it's like
think we both are trying to recover from that.
You in life, if I could go back and tell my adolescent self and get it through that person's thick skull, you will never please everybody.
Yeah.
So don't try. Find your voice, find your path at a younger age. Find it at some point.
Sure.
Whether you're adolescent or whether you're 60 years old, you have to find that path and stay true to yourself. But yeah, if I could go back and and tell my younger self to not be a people pleaser, do that. Like, go through life. Not that you're like trying to look for fights. It's just that you're not going to please everybody. And when you realize that you can't please everybody, one, it's disappointing, because you do want, I think it's in our nature,
speaking,
right? Yeah, you're not like wanting to go around and disappoint people, but be uncomfortable with disappointing people, because it's going to happen. And I tell people, at work, I tell people in conversations, when you grow the most, you are uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Typically in those situations, right? When you look back at your life and say, I grew the most when I did this, and I was not comfortable with doing whatever this is. I use the analogy sometimes of just riding a bike, something as elementary as that. We always start out on a bike with training wheels. Well, we're comfortable with our training wheels, but when you think of, well, I really rode a bike when I took the training wheels off. Oh my goodness, I still had my, dad hold my shirt or my seat. But then when he secretly let go, now I'm getting the confidence, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so uncomfortable. But you grow the most when you're the most uncomfortable. So, challenge yourself, go back, look at things in your life where you were uncomfortable. And I guarantee when you go back and look at those situations, especially if it's a growth opportunity and you've moved past that uncomfortable stage, you've grown from that, no matter how small it might be, but you've definitely grown when you're put in uncomfortable situations. You force yourself.
So speaking of uncomfortable situations,
yeah,
people pleasing is one of those
sure,
really difficult, nuanced spaces.
Yeah.
Because while we are very, I think, just as general human beings wanting to receive, it feels good for people to be proud of us. It feels good to get a attaboy or attagirl, and but what would be the difference to you, like, when would you know that you're people pleasing versus aligning with or being okay with
Yeah.
them not being happy with you? What's the difference between that and then just like, screw you, I don't care what you think?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
you don't want to go that level
There's an
where you
extreme,
become
right? Yeah.
hardened
Yeah.
and you say, this is how I feel and I'm not yielding
Right.
to anyone,
Right.
versus like the performance behavior where it's like, I earn your love? Like, what does that translate for you?
Yeah. There is a balance for sure, because the pendulum swings,
Sure.
both ways. You can have this extreme, I'm a people pleaser and I'm going to do everything I can to please everybody, to this hardened heart. Like you say, screw you. I'm stuck. You're not going to change me. You have to have, that dialogue. You have to be willing to receive criticism. Um, I think there's also, kind of jumping back, I think there's also a perception for somebody who is aware of, hey, I'm not going to be a people pleaser. I have my values, I don't want to say my truth, because truth is truth. I don't think there is a my truth. Um, it, I I have my values, my compass, as I would say. Um, some people might look at that and say, oh, you know, here's a guy who, he's just, they might view me as a hardened person because I'm not conforming
Sure.
to the masses. And that's difficult when you hear that, or when you believe that that's the perception of you, that somebody looks at you and says, oh, this person's just, they're stubborn, they're hard-headed, they're, not willing to give. We haven't had a conversation.
How do you know?
Yeah,
You're
for
judging
sure.
me.
Yeah, let's get uncomfortable and have a conversation. I'm here for it. I am not afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. I've had them. I welcome them because one, again, I'm going to pull something, good from a very uncomfortable conversation. Um, I hope that it's received as well for the other person. They don't come in just like,
Fisticuffs, ready
right,
to go.
let's go, 12 rounds. I want growth afterwards and after the conversation. If it's hard, there's tears, there's anger, there's emotion, there's heavy, raw emotion in those conversations. You grow after those conversations. I feel like you do. I know I have. I look back at those conversations. Sometimes they're years past, that they still play in my mind of what could I have done better. I look at myself and say, what could I have done better in that situation, to where that could have softened that. In some situations, what is said has to be said. But at the end, you hope that there's this reconciliation and there's this resolution to it. But
Yeah. What do you think? So if we're not pleasing people, then how do you determine what is true?
Yeah.
Right? You mentioned that not my truth, but
Yeah.
the truth.
Right.
And then like setting your compass, if you will,
Yep.
that this is what I'm going to reflect or bounce things off
Sure.
of, so that I'm not performing for people
Yeah.
or trying to please people.
Yeah.
Because that, when we don't have a clear like North Star, we don't have a focus on who we're becoming, then it is easy to get shiny penny syndrome, for lack of a better word, and try to morph into what is pleasing and acceptable to the person that we're trying to win the affection,
Sure,
or we're trying to
sure.
win that relationship, or really earn our keep there in that relationship. How do you split the line there and say and stay the course? How do you not get distracted?
It comes down to, like, for me, I have to go back to scripture. That is my guidance, my focus. Not everyone follows that same
Sure.
that same road, but I think even if you don't follow scripture, and we know folks that that don't have that as kind of their guiding force, but they have kind of this good nature, focus that they have. you always have to evaluate every situation that you're in. You have to evaluate yourself, as well as others. I mean, you recognize like what Scripture says. You recognize people by their fruit. You have to sometimes test that spirit a little bit, not only in yourself but also in others, to see to see where they're coming from. But you know, that's really kind of a short answer, I guess, to the question that you asked. But
So for you, it would
for
be
me, my guidance would be Scripture.
having that. Who am I? The only person you're essentially worried about pleasing is God.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, can you look in the mirror and say, I did.
Did I do everything right?
Did I do what I came to do today?
Yeah. Right.
Can I sleep at night knowing that I've lived and I am the man that I feel called to be, right? And if not, then what's the reflection of that later on?
Yeah.
How do you grow from there?
And it's ever, I mean, you're never come to the end in that, I mean, it's a constant, one of the things in Scripture talks about the potter and the clay.
Yeah.
If the clay, when you ever watch somebody make pottery, which is a beautiful thing, when they have this glob of clay and it turns into this vase or whatever it is that they're making, a sculpture. It's really impressive to see. And when you use that analogy, if it becomes imperfect, which we all are, then it gets started again, right? I mean, so it never comes to a full fruition. It's a process. And I think as long as you are aware of that process and you're constantly working on that process, you're doing the right thing.
Sure. Well, and I see you do that with our boys and teaching them, I think as young men, and, we've been blessed with raising the next generation of men, right? And we get 3 different personalities and they all need to be nurtured in a different way. But I do see how you are able to help them form that sense of identity early on in speaking truth to them. And it's not about what your friends think. It's not about who comes and goes. It's about, do you know who you are at the end of the day?
Right.
Who are you? And I see you challenging the boys to get clear on who they are. And you speak that truth into them. I'm grateful for that because I couldn't, the role that you play in their lives is not something that I could ever replace because you are their dad, and sometimes I feel like there's in marriages, in relationships, that they are one-sided, someone's doing most of the heavy lifting and the other person's a little more passive in that. And maybe it's personality driven, maybe it's tools, skills driven, but I've always appreciated, I remember when Landon was 13 and he was like starting to kind of flex on me a little bit, like challenge it. And do you remember that? What I said to you?
There have been a few situations. I don't remember what you said to me exactly.
But you did what you came to. You rode in on a white horse. I was just like, and here's a list of conversations that I need you to have with him on the way to school. Because I knew that the point of influence was shifting, of where it wasn't mommy's little boy anymore, and those emotional, building their emotional IQ, early nurturing stages. It was going into those formation of what kind of man does he want to be? Does he want to be a man of convenience or a man of character? And those were things that you were going to have to speak into him. Those were not things that I could do because I'm not a guy. Those are man-to-man conversations. So,
well, I know you play a special role as well in our three boys. Where I have more of a, I would say, rigid approach, more of a direct. You have more of that nurturing, which they need as well.
Sure.
And so, very complimentary of how you teach and how you grow and just your wisdom. The knowledge that you have gained over the course of your life that you share not only with our boys, but with other folks too. So.
Well, and that's one thing that I do love about our relationship is, and we are far from perfect, and we
Yeah.
get frustrated with
Sure.
each other, and we have tiffs, and we have arguments, and we have times where we're frustrated. But we have always had a clear picture of like if you, for lack of a better phrase, well, this is, how I would sum us up is we've always had rules of engagement, like really very clear boundaries around where we will and won't go
Yeah.
in conflict.
Yeah.
And so that has helped to preserve integrity and respect in
Yeah.
our relationship. And we've both allowed each other as we've grown. I mean, we met when we were I was 16, you were 17.
Yeah.
And we started a friendship then. And then we were married. I was 20 and you were 21. And like, so one could argue that we've, raised each other up,
Sure.
over the years,
Yeah.
because there was so much growing that happens in those very early 20s and 30s, and growing through parenthood and lending grace to one another and reflecting and being open and trusting one another. But at the core, I don't know that we could have allowed each other and encouraged one another or taken each other's advice or listened. I could not have yielded to your leadership in ways if I didn't trust you, and I wouldn't have been able to trust you had we not had core rules that I knew you were never going to violate those.
Yeah, right.
No name calling,
Yeah,
no disrespect. Don't disrespect. Don't abandon the person and emotionally abandon the person.
Right.
Don't make fun of the other person.
No.
These are some core things that sneak into a relationship because they're easy, and you're hurt and you're angry, but it breaks that trust bond in a marriage. And then the other person isn't allowed to lean into their by design nature because they feel like they have to compensate for the other person because they don't trust them. And then you end up having a power struggle over, whose role it is, and and you don't trust each other. At the end of the day, it comes down to when you're trying to do overreach or you're trying to compensate for someone else, it always boils down to trust. You don't trust the other person to do what they need to do. You don't trust God.
Foundation.
Right.
Foundation.
And that's something that I'm so glad that we did do well, is we were always we protected the trust bond, I think, between us. We didn't break each other's trust, handled with care, always, and that's paid off. Allowing me to be able to lean into what I'm good at and allowing you to lean into what you're good at. Messy as it is, I make mistakes, you make mistakes, but we've trusted each other to play that role in our kids' lives. That all came back to because we trusted each other with each other's hearts. I trusted you to be careful with me. You trusted me to be careful with you, to be able to open up to you. And that's something I think is pretty cool that we do.
Indeed.
I'm very proud of us.
Dink.
So as we wrap up our time together, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Obviously, grief is a huge part of the work that I do, and grief that's shaped our life in many ways, and it's something that's widely misunderstood. I don't think I know people are not aware of what grief is and the impact. They don't even know how to recognize loss in their own life or what's happening around them, and so a lot of times that shifts to blaming people, and that it's a character flaw rather than something that happened and then an emotional response to it. But we all have to come to terms with letting go in seasons of our lives in order to be able to move on to another season. Did you ever have to grieve something? Maybe you knew you were doing it, maybe you didn't know you were doing it, but was there something you really intentionally remember grieving that you had to release in order to be able to step into the next season of your life? Does that make sense?
It does. It kind of goes back to, it really kind of goes back to the version of that people pleaser of, and you've talked about it before, there's many stages of grief, many stages, some that we aren't even aware of. so it's hard for me when I think of grieving. I'm thinking of, crying. I'm thinking of,
Sure.
the processing of information. I don't want to say sulking, but sitting in this
Yeah.
pool of
Right.
muck.
Grief has a connotation
For
that
sure.
you're
For sure.
wallowing in it.
Yep,
You're,
yep.
sackcloth and
Right.
ashes, know,
Right.
that kind of thing.
I wouldn't say I've ever, I can't say ever I have been in that moment, but as far as like grieving a process of me letting go of, maybe a personality or a
Relationship.
attitude. Yeah. For me, again, kind of going back to being that people pleaser, I want to make everybody happy. I'm going at it, making me go through the flames in order to make other people happy. There's points in life that you may have to do that, right? I mean, sacrificing, what you want to do for your spouse, 100%. I'm all about that. But again, people pleasing in the general sense of, letting that side of me go to where, I do have boundaries.
Sure.
I'm going to tell you no. I'm going to say, that's not right. That's not okay. Maybe in a relationship, a very strong foundational years of great, relationship that, another person outside of our marriage that we've had that isn't doing something right. We confront that person. That changes because of the boundaries of what we, believe to, what we believe to be right. And we call this person out and say, hey, that's not okay. I have to be protective of, my home, my family. And yes, I get the fact that we've had years together, but, not right, not okay. And I'm going to call you out on it. We can have conversations if you want to like defend yourself. But again, we're going to have, my old previous self would have been like, it's them. It's who they are. It's what they do. We'll just let bygones be, but 100%. And that's, that part of me, that person of me, I would say, grieving because I do want to make people happy, but understanding, there's a boundary to that. And that's where this is what it is. There's no going past this boundary. This is the boundary. The boundary does not move. It's in concrete.
And not
a line in the sand. The sand can,
you can mess up the sand.
New line.
It's like a line in the concrete. It's definite.
Yeah.
That has been an interesting journey watching you do that as a wife, knowing how much you care for people and how deeply you care for people. And then it makes me emotional because I know how much you care for people. And when people misunderstand your boundaries or that you're figuring them out too, and you're trying to learn what it's like to hold people accountable, but also love deeply.
Yeah. For sure.
And you make mistakes too.
Yeah.
But to see how much you care and to see you growing as a person and trying to figure that out, what does letting go of pleasing people look like while also protecting my peace, my family, and also there's like a fine line between accepting bad behavior and loving the person, right? For sure. Even if they don't ever change. And that's messy and it's hard to figure out all the time, which is why I think you do have to have people in your corner that you can be gut level honest with and saying like, I realized that something shifted in me and I'm being more of a people pleaser in this relationship and I don't want to do that. It might be awkward when I draw some boundary lines and it's going to be uncomfortable for them. They don't like it.
Right.
Because they're like, now a version of you's changed.
Sure, yeah.
And so they're grieving the version of you that was okay with how they behaved.
Yeah.
And so everyone's kind of grieving at the same time and it can be really messy.
Sure.
But I love the way that you do it is watching you do that and being able to support you and encourage you and it's been hard. I think it's been hard for us because we both have different ways of processing
Sure, yeah,
it
yeah,
too.
yeah.
And we've had some deep, hurtful, not hurtful each other, but just like realization conversations, and the tenderness of the way I express it versus the way you express it. And then if I share about how I feel, then that feels some kind of way to you because you're protective of me. And it's been hard to let that go.
One of the and really over the past probably year or so, there was this word that really never hit me, that's been around my whole life, that I've heard my whole life, that really never hit me until I would say probably within the last year, and really understanding the context of the word. So oftentimes people hear the word, peacekeeper, a keeper of the peace. That means passive to me.
Or that you're going to do whatever you need to do.
I'm going to just keep the peace.
Right.
Everybody,
I'm shoring this up here. I'm over here.
Yeah. In Scripture, it talks about peacemaker. I'm going to make peace, right? It is having sometimes uncomfortable conversations. It's sometimes confronting situations that are not correct, that are not right. Or at least investigating what that, this is why I perceive it this way. This is what I understand the situation to be. It's not passive. We are not meant to be passive creatures. We often find ourselves being passive because we want to keep the peace. But if we are going to make peace, if we are peacemakers, we have to confront those situations in a way that at the end of it, there's reconciliation, right? There's not, like you mentioned, there's not like this fisticuffs that I'm coming in. It might appear that I'm coming in maybe a little bit more rigid or tough, but again, that is the grieving perhaps process of past situations coming out to play. But knowing that at the end result is reconciliation. That reconciliation may be, I go this way, you go this way. And that's okay. There's wisdom in that. But that word peacemaker it's
a very active word.
For sure.
You are making, not a passive. You're creating.
It relies on you to do something. Yeah, it's like you say, it's actionable.
And if you're a maker of peace, like just flip that around, right? I'm a maker of peace, then peace has accountability, forgiveness, acknowledgement, restoration. Like there's elements to that. And that if you aren't able to be a maker of peace, it's an opportunity. If you can't be a maker of peace, you would be a maker of essentially chaos, right?
Yeah, right.
So
right,
strife, alienating people, kicking people out, just like there's just turmoil.
Yeah.
So to be makers of peace, we have to then self-reflect. Do I have the skills to make peace?
Yeah.
What are those skills? Well, I have to self-examine myself, right? What parts of me are unhealed that might need to get healed so that I can come to this without agenda, emotion, accusation. That I can come here with a peaceful presence within myself first. Then I can make peace among men, right?
Yep.
But if you're chaos inside, hurt, pain, anger, you're unresolved, then how are you going to cultivate and create that and be a peacemaker? Yep. You'll just be a peacekeeper where you're constantly shape-shifting, trying to please everybody and make sure that never the two shall meet, in which case, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, and that's been a journey. That's been a journey for us for sure.
It's discovery.
Yeah. And being a peacemaker in our home versus a peacekeeper and, codependent relationships versus integrated relationships that rely on each other. And, that's a good word for the people as we leave them.
Peacemaker.
Yes. Be a peacemaker, a maker of peace, everybody.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the tools, go get it.
Yes, indeed.
It's worth it.
A lot of resources out there.
It's worth it.
A lot of resources.
I'm going to make him write his own book one day. He's a wealth, a trove of treasure. You just have to sit in his wisdom. Well, whether you're listening in the car, folding your laundry, on a walk, or with friends, sitting in a quiet moment before your day begins, I'm glad you're here. Until next time, love your people, live your purpose, and create possibilities, because life is now in session. Thanks for joining us.
Peace.